You have found why we are Christians. My name is Kent Philpott, and we're going to be talking with Rich Robinson. And we're going to be hearing all kinds of things that he has to say. And so welcome, Rich.
Thank you, Kent. Great to be here.
Glad you're on the program. And I have a suspicion this is going to be a 3-program set. Usually we do 2, but I think after reading all the stuff about you, Rich, we're going to do that. Now, I got to ask you, how did a nice Jewish boy like you get the name like Robinson?
It's a great question. Our family name, my father's side, we were from Romania, and the family name there was Rivenson. And
Say that, what was that?
Rivenson.
Okay.
And somehow, you know, as many people do when they came to the United States, they changed their name or had their name changed for them at Ellis Island. At some point, we became Robinson, and we're still trying to trace back exactly where that happened, but my great-grandfather, I think, already was Robinson by the time they came to New York City.
So they came to New York. Now, so your father's side from Romania.
Yes.
Your mother's side from someplace else, I think.
So on my mother's side, her father was from Russia, and her mother was from a branch of our family that was actually in France. They also originally came from Russia, from Bialystok, but they all moved to Paris. They really became very French. They adopted the name Chacher. And and then after a while, they also moved to New York City, except for one of those members.
But your parents were born here in the U.S.
They were born in the U.S., yeah.
Okay.
Definitely, in the Bronx.
In the Bronx. And now that's where you got your start, in the Bronx.
I was born in the Bronx, lived for a few years in Queens, but most of my memories are from growing up in Brooklyn. We moved to a neighborhood called Canarsie.
Canarsie.
Which is also where the CEO of Starbucks happens to be from, Howard Schultz.
Okay.
But they don't give me any additional discounts at Starbucks because of that. I don't know why, but they don't do that. But yeah, so we lived in Canarsie, and I lived there till I went off to college, really. That was my formative years was in that neighborhood.
In Canarsie. Now, I've been in New York a couple times. I think I was in Brooklyn once.
Yeah.
Driving through on my way to Manhattan. But what was it like living in New York City, growing up there, your high school years in Brooklyn?
Well, actually, my high school years were in Manhattan because I went to Stuyvesant High School, which was a subway ride into Manhattan from Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, in Canarsie itself, the newer section was Jewish, the older section was Italian, and I myself went to Temple Emanuel of Canarsie, which was on Rockaway Parkway, the main drag, opposite Grabstein's Deli.
Now, I've heard of that place.
I don't know if you have, really.
Is that famous, Grabstein's Deli?
No.
Not famous?
No, it's obscure. It's very obscure. You may be thinking of Katz's or Carnegie.
Now, you say that they had really good steaks there.
They're good Romanian tenderloin steaks, yeah.
Okay.
They did, and they've closed down now. The neighborhood is no longer really a Jewish neighborhood. The temple's still there. But it was a great place to grow up. It was a safe place for kids. I enjoyed my years there.
Now, what's it? I'm going to guess it's a Reformed
temple.
Reformed, okay.
Yeah. So to be honest, my family was pretty secular, Reformed Jews. Faith in God was not something we talked about a whole lot. One exception was my mother's father, so my maternal grandfather. He had grown up a lot more religious, he and his brothers, and so he was sort of the one who really taught me a lot about Judaism. He taught me to say some of the prayers. He brought me to the synagogue with him, and I think he was probably the strongest religious influence in my family. And I have great memories of my Jewish friends from my synagogue. There were the Sanit twins that I always got mixed up, never got their names right, no matter how many times I tried. So many other people, the class clown, I remember him. I'm now friends with him on Facebook. So many other people that just bring back great memories.
Now, were you bar mitzvahed?
At Temple Emanuel, studied actually after regular school during the week, twice, 3 times. Went to Hebrew school for bar mitzvah prep. 1966. Had my bar mitzvah in the temple. We had the reception, because you always have to have a big reception after the bar mitzvah. We had the reception in Long Island. As I remember, we had an Italian MC at the place, which was called Monty's, and they recorded all of this on the obsolete format reel-to-reel tape. And I got a copy of that. And partway through the tape, you can hear one of my relatives starting to argue, or one of the guests arguing with the MC, I don't know over what. Very New York, very Long Island, and it was unique.
That's great. What kind of a preparation was it? You said a little bit, Rich, to get ready for the bar mitzvah. Did you learn to speak Hebrew at all?
Not in a way that was conversational Hebrew today. What you learn is you learn enough Hebrew so that you can chant your portion of the scripture. And so what happens is you read from the Haftarah, which is the corresponding portion to that week's reading from the Torah. And then you have a reading from the prophets or some other book. So you learn enough so that you can read the sounds, chant the melodies, read the text, but you don't really learn the meaning of what you're reading. But the advantage was that you learn the alphabet from a very young age, and I can fluently really read through Hebrew texts, especially in the Bible, where they give the vowels. Not so easy in modern Hebrew, but it was preparation. That plus Jewish history, other subjects. I can't remember what all it was, but the whole idea: get you ready for the big day. You're going to be there. You're going to chant your Haftarah portion. If you make a mistake, they'll tell you. You go back, you correct the mistake, you keep going.
Wow. And so you're about 13?
I was 13.
You were 13. Okay, that's usual.
Yeah, that is the age for boys. Yeah.
That's okay. So a Reformed temple, your bar mitzvah. Did you come across with any idea about God at all? Did you have much of a God concept from that?
We probably talked about it in Hebrew school, maybe talked about it occasionally at home, but it was nothing that was really front and center. The one memory that stands out for me is that at some point my parents quoted from the Bible, or thought they were quoting from the Bible, and I guess I asked, where do we all come from? And there's a verse in Genesis that God created man out of the dust of the earth, according to the older translations. So they told me we're made out of dust. So I looked under my bed and saw these balls of dust there. I don't know what that reflects on my mother's housekeeping. You know, maybe the balls of dust shouldn't have been there. But they were there, and I took a look, and I thought, how can we come out of that? And it was very confusing, and that was probably my main experience with God growing up. We come from dust. God made me out of those things that are under my bed.
Well, you weren't an atheist.
No, and I think I had, some spiritual inclinations. It's just that, my whole family to this day is basically secular, so God just didn't come to the forefront. I mean, even after my bar mitzvah, I was still involved in Jewish things. I went to a Jewish summer camp, but that was pretty secular also. It was called Camp Shomria. It was up in the Catskill Mountains in Liberty, New York, and it was run by Hashomer Hatzair, which is a Zionist youth organization. And like I say, nothing really religious about it. In the morning we had Hebrew lessons, ulpan, like they do for a new immigrant in Israel. Then we had work projects that they called avodah, that's the Hebrew for work, as though you were on a kibbutz doing work. And we staged a production of a 1960s avant-garde play that was called The Persecution and Assassination of Marat, as performed by the inmates of the Asylum of Charenton under the direction of the Marquis de Sade. Now, that tells you something about the religious teaching.
You guys were having some fun.
We had fun. Yeah, it was good.
Okay. That's really something. And you enjoyed those days. You enjoyed that period of history.
Yeah.
Didn't have much of a God concept. Oh, I was going to ask you. No. You gave me a little sentence there. dust. Hebrew. When you go back in that passage, about God making Adam, was it dust or dirt or what?
Oh, I'd have to look at it. I'm thinking it's afar, which is dust, or but in the sense, not in the sense of dust balls that you need to vacuum, in the sense of dust of the earth type of thing.
Okay, all right, Rich. I won't press you on that
Yeah.
one. Well, now let's get into a little bit of your education history. Okay, now I see.
I'm a dummy.
Oh yeah, I can tell. That's easy to see.
Thank you.
I got a couple books that you wrote over here. Okay, which we'll get to in the next program.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get to this stuff. But I'm interested in your education. Now, you got out of high school. What happened right after that?
Got out of high school. Spent my first year at an engineering school and realized that wasn't for me. And then I transferred over to Syracuse University, and that's where I stayed till I got my BA, which ended up being in English literature, actually.
You end up going to a Christian seminary. Now, it was Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in '78. Now, where's that located?
It's outside of Chicago, north side, Deerfield, Illinois.
Okay, how did you get there?
So here's where we get back into the religion and spirituality. So even though it was not a religious home, I was always interested in different things. So my dad, probably when I was in high school, shows me a book he has lying around. It has to do with this, I don't know what I would call him, a psychic, a clairvoyant. Maybe today he'd be called a New Age guy named Edgar Casey, whom people of our generation
I was into
know.
him too, Rich.
People of our generation know about him exactly. Others may not. He's not so big anymore. But I read this book about him, fascinated me. It got me thinking maybe there is some world beyond, beyond just what we can see. And as I got further into reading about him, the idea was that people would come to him with diseases that they had that the doctors couldn't cure. He'd go into some trance. He would give a very weird diagnosis, prescribe a very weird treatment, and supposedly it all worked. I didn't do any research or fact-checking, but I said, this is really interesting. Wow, this sounds like it's a doorway into something that's beyond this life. And then he ended up saying things about Jesus also. Here's the thing, okay? If someone had come out of a church and started talking to me about Jesus, I would not have been open to that. In fact, the only real interaction I had with somebody about that sort of thing was in junior high school. Is that the same as middle school today?
Yeah,
I don't know these old terms. Junior high school, I had a Catholic friend who we got talking about religion. He was saying he got taught God was the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. I could not wrap my head around that at all. So we moved on to another topic. Otherwise, I had no religious interaction growing up, and like I say, if someone walked up to me out of a church and told me about Jesus, I would have said, no way. So here's the thing. Edgar Casey's version of Jesus was very Eastern and mystical and New Age, and that's okay for Jews to explore. We today and for the past generation or so have been spiritual explorers. Here in the Bay Area, there's a lot of Jews following Buddhism called Jubus, for real.
Jubus,
the
yes.
Jubus, there are books on the Jubus. Hindus, Jews who practice Hinduism or follow some variety of Hinduism. A lot of spiritual exploration. So for me, a New Agey Jesus was just another thing that was not the church Jesus. I explored it. No conflict, by the way, with my Jewish identity. To me, it was like two separate issues. I know I'm Jewish. I'm going to be involved, Jewish camp, later on in college, Hillel. My explorations about Jesus, that's just another thing I'm checking out. So I start to read about Edgar Casey, start to get really interested and find that Edgar Casey says something along the lines of Jesus is the way to God. I said, okay, that's great. Maybe that's how I plug into God. And went off to college, and still found that I had a real spiritual hunger that was growing. And Edgar Casey wasn't quite fitting the bill. It was all very interesting. It was all very esoteric. It was kind of mind-opening. But I didn't really feel I was connecting into God through this, okay?
Now, Rich, that reminds me a little bit of myself. Before I became a Christian, I was into UFOs, and I was into, and I don't know the connection, Bridie Murphy. Have you ever heard of Bridie?
I've heard, yeah.
And so I have a similar background in that sense. Now, this is while you're in Syracuse doing your bachelor's.
That's at Syracuse, yeah. And, you know, I think a lot of people from that generation. So I start to do exploring of a lot of things. I think I attended a Hare Krishna meeting. I think at the same time I was, you know, attending the Hillel stuff that was going on.
Now, what is Hillel? What do you mean?
Hillel is the Jewish student organization.
Okay.
It's nationwide. You become a member, and you go to the services. They have classes, whatever. Just keeps up your Jewish identity.
Okay.
And so, you know, and I was taking classes in Eastern religions. I wrote one paper. I wrote one paper for a religion class combining, in my mind, Hinduism and Christianity into one religion. I think I got a D. You know, I wondered why the professor, you know, didn't see the brilliance of my proposal. And, you know, because it would have been world-changing, but it was not to be. And so, you know, I kept dabbling and experimenting, and I remember I bought a book called 500 Ways That People Can Grow Spiritually. Everything's in alphabetical order. You know, it's just you thumb through it, whatever, you know, floats your boat, you can go for. It started with astrology, it went to Zen Buddhism, I got to the letter Y for yoga. I said, you know, maybe I can plug into God with yoga. So I buy a book with, you know, the guru, the Swami, who is showing you in all the photographs how to twist up into the positions, and I found out I was not able to twist into these positions, which, you know, of course, that got me worried. What if salvation was only for flexible people? Then this is not a good thing. This is not a good thing. And I kept searching, and I was getting very frustrated because I figured there's some reality out there. I just can't grab a hold of it. And that's when I think God brought into my life a guy from one of the campus Christian groups named Dan.
Okay.
And
Campus Crusade.
it was actually Campus Crusade
otherwise
for
known
Christ.
now as Cru.
Now they call it Cru.
Right.
You know, it's not a great name if you're from a Jewish family. I mean, I know Jewish staff people with the organization, but, you know, Camp Crusades has like a bad ring in the Jewish mind.
Yes.
They shortened it to Cru. So now, you know, a student can go home and the mother will say, what are you involved with? I'm with Cru. What's that? Well, it's short for crusade. I don't know that it made any difference. So you end up with the same thing. But the guy was with Campus Crusade for Christ. And, you know, they have this thing they bring out, the 4 spiritual laws.
Oh, yes. Love them.
And I was going through it with the guy, and I realized that as he goes through this, I realized, you know, it talks about what keeps us from God. God loves us, you know, wants us to have a full life, but what's keeping us from that? It's our sin, the sin in our life, where we put ourselves, they have the illustration, we put ourselves on the throne of our life, and everything else is all chaotic instead of putting God, so it's not so chaotic. And I realized, you know, Edgar Casey never said anything about sin. And I said, okay, I really think that I agree that there is a thing called sin. I agree that I've done sinful things. I'm a sinner. And as we went through this, I did, at the end of the conversation, pray to ask Jesus into my life. But, big but, I was only halfway there because I still had so many impediments to faith. I still believed in reincarnation. After all, doesn't the Gospel of John say you must be born again? If that's not reincarnation, what is? Wrong, but not in the Jewish context, but that's how I read it. I didn't believe Jesus was God. I thought that was a lot of nonsense. I didn't believe the Bible was given by God. I thought if anything had authority, it was Edgar Casey. And this went on, you know, I would meet with Dan.
Now, Rich, let me make...
Go ahead.
Okay, now this is... this is when you're working with the people in crew and you're reading the four spiritual laws.
Yeah.
And this is what happened during that period of
That's
time.
right. That's
Okay.
right. And so I met with Dan. We'd meet a couple of times a week. If I didn't like his answers, I would just stalk off in anger. I was a bit of a hothead. And he'd wonder, what's this crazy guy? Should I even be meeting with this guy? Look how he behaves. And I'd call him the next day and say, I want to keep talking about it. Let's get together again. And I don't think he knew what to make of all that. But long story short, end of my sophomore year, I came to the place where I felt I was fighting God. That's the only way I can put it. I felt like I was fighting God. And that if anything was going to be true, it was the Jesus of the Bible and his message and his identity as God, in the flesh, as a human being, and the Bible as God's communication, his word to us. And that's when I think I really count putting my faith in him. I went home, chucked all my Edgar Casey books into the incinerator. We had incinerators in those days.
Yes, I remember
instead
those.
of recycling. And that's when I count my coming to faith. So around 1973, end of sophomore year.
1973. Okay. That's just as the Jesus People movement was ending. It went from, in my counting, from like 67 to 72, in some places 75. So that fits.
It fits, and interestingly, so that year I become a believer, and I got very excited about my faith. And I set up a book table on campus with literature for Jewish students about Jesus that I got from some Jewish mission that was in the area. And
American Board of Missions to the Jews?
It wasn't actually. It's the Friends of Israel.
Friends of Israel, okay.
They had an opera singer on their staff who would come up and give, I don't know, gospel, opera, concerts or something. And he used to provide me with literature.
So you became very zealous.
I was enthused. I don't always like the word zealous. I was
Okay.
enthused.
Okay.
I really felt like, wow, reality is making sense to me in a way it never has before. And I wanted to, talk to others about that. So I set up the book table. The rabbi from Hillel, I won't attribute it just to my book table, but he started up a weekly class against the gospel, really. Because 1973 was also the year of a big evangelistic thrust nationwide called Key 73.
Yes, I remember.
Which you'll remember.
Yeah.
And there was a bumper sticker that said, I found it. That was the slogan.
Yes.
I found it. You're supposed to ask, what did you find, or something. Jewish community comes back with a bumper sticker, we never lost it. So the rabbi starts a once-a-week class called Answers to Jesus Freaks. Back then, that was a name for Christians, if you didn't like them so much, the Jesus Freaks. So the first class, it's me and the rabbi, maybe 20 other students, 15 other students. After that, everyone loses interest except me and the rabbi. So we met in his office privately every week from then on.
Now, I got to stop you, Rich. Why did they lose interest? Now let me get this straight. The rabbi, the Jewish rabbi, he starts a thing maybe trying to counter the Jesus freak thing.
Yeah.
So what was he trying to do?
He was trying to ensure that the Jewish students don't, quote, fall for gospel presentations. And why did they all lose interest? Because they didn't care. It wasn't relevant to them. And so it was me and the rabbi, and maybe another Hillel student, or they had some Christian organizations. Maybe someone else would sit in once a week. But me and the rabbi, and we went at it for the better part of a school year. And some great conversations with some of the Hillel people also outside the rabbi's office. By the way, his name was Rabbi Elephant, but maybe he was pronounced Elephant. He had a big picture of an elephant on his office door. So it was kind of fun. And I would talk to other Jewish students out there. One of them has since gone on to be a professor of religion in New Jersey. And it was a very stimulating time. It helped me solidify my faith. And most Jews, when they hear about Jesus, they see that as a conflict with being Jewish, and we can get into that later on. But for me, that really wasn't the case. For me, it was a question of truth. Who is Jesus? Is it who these people are saying he is? That's what I wanted. And I believe then and I believe now that something's either true or it's not. So, the question was, is Jesus the Messiah? Is Jesus the way to God? If that's true, then it's true for Jews, it's true for Gentiles. It has nothing to do with leaving my Jewishness. What's true is true, and that's what I was after.
And so many people I know, my wife is Jewish, and so often think, well, if I believe in Jesus, I'm losing my Jewish identity.
It's a very common way to think. That's how we're taught, because we think as Jews, we don't think vertically so much. We don't think, what does God want out of my life? Most Jews today are secular or certainly not Orthodox. And we think horizontally in terms of we're the Jewish people, the others are not the Jewish people. If you put your faith in Jesus, then you have joined those who are not the Jewish people, because Jews don't believe in Jesus. And sometimes I've had relatives ask me a question like this: so why did you switch teams?
Switch teams, okay.
You were on the Jewish team. Why did you switch? Did you get a better offer? Why did you switch over? And I have to explain, it's not a matter of switching teams. I didn't move from team Jewish to team Baptist or whatever. It's a matter of, what does God want from us? What do we have to do in this life? And if Jesus is the Messiah, then Jews should believe in him. They should believe in him of all people. So, but we don't think in those terms.
I know exactly what you mean, Rich. And well, we didn't get as far in the program as I wanted to, but we know where we're going to pick up in the second part of the program.
Sounds good.
We're going to get to that. We didn't even get to your next school. We didn't get you. We still got you in university. All right, we're going to continue this program. There's going to be another session. There'll be part 2, and there's going to be a part 3. This is quite a story. We'll look forward for more from Rich. So thank you for watching Why We Are Christians.